It is now 9:31 on Thursday, August 26th of 2021, and it's the ILL Tech Group meeting for Rails. My name is Regina Kennedy, also known as Jeannie, and I'm from Lake Forest Library. Welcome, everyone. I'm calling the meeting to order, and I'd like to ask if there are any additions to the agenda for today. I do have an addition that is from Indian Trails. It's with Patty Bueller. She's going to present briefly how Indian Trails processes all of their overdue materials.
This is Ann from.
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is Ann from Prospect Heights. I don't know if we'd considered an addition to the agenda, but I just wanted to make a small mention about the Rails transit tickets.
Rails.
If there's time.
Okay.
Thanks.
Rails transit tickets. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes from the May 27th? If there are no changes or additions, do I have someone who will approve those minutes?
I approve.
State what.
Maggie
Okay.
from Round Lake Area Library.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and can you announce your name and which library?
Paula Pavelski from Zion Benton.
Thank you, Paula. The next bit of business is voting on the slated candidates to continue for 2021 and myself, Jeannie.
Sorry, Jeannie.
Since I'm
so sorry, just to let you know, you're freezing up every once in a while, so the sound's kind of skipping too.
Oh, let me try it again. The slated candidates to continue for 2021 would be the chair, Jeannie Kennedy, myself, vice chair, Stephanie from Highland Park, and the secretary from Niles would be Mary Ellen. Since I'm one of these people, Mako, do you want to take the vote?
Yeah, I will. And I'll give a little context for anyone who was not at the last meeting. So at the last meeting, we very briefly talked about the officers for this year, and because of COVID and the meeting schedule, last year's vacant officer positions weren't filled until February 2021. And so because of that, at the last meeting, we proposed maintaining current officer positions through the end of this fiscal year. So just meaning officers remain in their positions to the end of June 2022. So we decided to put the formal vote for the officer positions on this month's agenda. So with that, we definitely want to open it up to any questions or discussions before I push forward a motion. So I will pause for a second to see if there's any questions. Okay. If no questions, I will then seek a motion to maintain the ILL Tech Group officers in their current positions through the end of this fiscal year, so through the end of June 2022. So with that, may I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve all of you, and thank you very, very much.
So that was Maggie from Round Lake. And then may I have a second?
I'll second again.
Paula from Zion Benton. Okay, so all in favor?
You already changed this one?
Yes, yes, yes.
I see a lot of nods and hands. Any opposed? I see nothing. So we're going to say that that is approved. So thank you very much to the officers. And with that, I will pass it back to Jeannie.
Thank you. Just to review what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover any updates with Rails. We're going to refresh entering and modifying out-of-system accounts in Leap.
Want the fan now,
We're
Sam?
going to briefly cover.
I'm fine. I'm fine now, so you can.
We're going to briefly cover book clubs at your library and part of what ALA does, the American Library Association. And then Jackie is going to cover a discussion with some questions that were already listed. Then we have Patty Bueller, who's going to be covering processing overdue materials at Indian Trails, and then the Rails transit tickets. This past month, we did a virtual meeting covering documents, forms, timelines, and things like that with the tech group. And so that's kind of what we've been doing. Mako, is there anything that you have to add to that we covered?
Yeah, I do have a couple updates. So the first one, I just wanted to address, talk about a bug that some people have found in 6.7, where an unlocked request, when you unlock a request, that format field disappears. So the good news is that is fixed in version 7.0. We've updated our training database to version 7.0. I've been able to test, and it looks like it's all fixed. So we do have, I think at least a couple more months of testing the new version, training staff on new functions for that new version, but we will be updating to 7.0 late fall, early winter, I anticipate. So watch out for that. The other update I have in terms of like CCS new stuff is on our updated website. So you've likely seen updates in the CCS newsletters that we are working on a new website that's going to combine our main site, the learning portal, and the training.ccslib.org website. So we got 3 resources combining into one. There's some great features coming. One of which that I'm really excited about is that users will be able to bookmark their favorite pages. So you can have a list of your most referenced pages right at your fingertips instead of having to dig through one site or multiple sites to find them, which is fantastic. However, with having these features for individuals, this also means we need a different way to log in besides everyone uses the same shared website. So the website is going to use your Rails and your L2 login. So you're going to be very sick of hearing CCS staff tell people to like make sure your your L2 login is up to date and that you know your password. I imagine staff here probably log into the Rails website and the L2 websites pretty regularly, especially since we've just done the count. So I'm betting a lot of people here are already set with their L2 and Rails logins, but if you have a moment in the next month or so, double check. And that way you'll be set when the new website launches. And with that too, I know some of you who were here early saw this. We're trying a new way to do attendance at meetings. So I'm just gonna pop into the chat right now a link to a document. And if sometime before the end of the meeting, you can open the document, type your name in by your library, that would be fantastic. I'm also planning on sending this link out to the ILL listserv after the meeting. So if you don't get a chance to before we log off, you'll have access to it later. So we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it'll be easier than the poor secretary going through the chat and trying to record everyone's names.
Okay, just one other thing. Jeannie, if you can speak up when you're talking so everyone can hear you. That was in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I am all done with my update, so I'll pass it back to Jeannie.
Okay. New business, is Deb here?
Deborah was not able to make it today, so I'll be filling in for her.
Okay. Is there anything that you wanted to add on her behalf?
Not at this time.
Okay. New business, Rails ending support for Share Illinois.
Yes, I'm going to take this one and I am going to share my screen because I have a little PowerPoint as we go through this. So let me just present.
Can you please email Dr. Dawn? Tell her
Yes.
everything's fabulous.
I thought that was for me, but maybe not. Okay. And let me, I'm just trying to get, there we go. Okay, so Share Illinois. For those who may not be familiar, Share Illinois is an agreement that allows for staff, as it says here, staff-initiated interlibrary loans directly between participating libraries and consortia. So basically it allows other libraries like Naperville to log into our online catalog and place a hold directly with CCS without needing to use WorldShare OCLC. So Rails announced that they will be discontinuing support for Share as of October 30th of this year. And, just kind of answering the question, why is Rails discontinuing Share? This is paraphrased from their announcement, but with consortium membership growing statewide, this means that libraries are able to satisfy more of the resource sharing needs through their own membership. And additionally, looking to the future, Rails would like to grow other services like Find More Illinois. So they felt that retiring a lower impact service like Share allows them to focus more energy and funds on supporting consortia and growing their other tools. So what does this mean for libraries? The Share Illinois website will go offline. I don't know how active their email listserv was, but that will also be discontinued at that time. And then if you logged into other consortia catalogs to place holds directly, so if you've logged into like Swan's catalog and placed holds there instead of going through WorldShare, you may not have that ability after October 30th. And I say may not because while Rails is no longer facilitating the service, individual consortia may decide themselves if they want to allow these direct requests for their individual catalogs. So with this, there are two ways that CCS can move forward after October. The first thing is that we can continue to allow direct requests. So the libraries who have been using this service can continue logging into our ILL for Cooperative Computer Services PAC profile and place holds. And just as they do now, these holds will then appear on your pick list. The second option is that we can discontinue the service. So in this case, we would suppress the ILL for CCS PAC profile so no one can log into it. And we would also configure it so that libraries registered in our database are no longer able to log in and place holds. So we anticipate governance making a decision on how we as a group will move forward sometime this fall. So ahead of any decision, we did want to get feedback from ILL staff on the use of the ILL PAC and continuing to fulfill these direct holds. So I did want to just kind of give you some context too. We ran some numbers on how many holds are placed through, how many shareholds are placed at CCS. So between August 2018 and July 2021, we had 2,160 shareholds that were placed in the ILL for CCS PAC. Now the ILL for CCS PAC was not active during those COVID months. So there was over a year when it was not taking holds. So excluding those inactive those inactive months, these numbers average out to about 98 requests per active month. So this number, depending on how other consortia move forward with their own service. This number may increase for us if we decide to continue on, or it may stay relatively stable. So with that, I want to turn it back over to the group. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I can definitely put those numbers up again, and just see how you felt about moving forward with allowing these direct requests. Does anyone place, I'm not sure if any of our libraries place holds in other consortia catalogs. I think from previous discussion, it sounds like a lot of you go through WorldShare rather than another consortia's catalog.
Lake
The
Forest.
only one that we do like a direct request is with Naperville, because Naperville does not participate in WorldShare. And so I think a lot of people probably have their own little library card, and then Naperville will send a direct request to you that way.
And we've done that occasionally, yeah.
I do like the fact that other libraries can place holds through the catalog rather than calling me and asking me if they can borrow an item and what do they have to do to borrow it, and should I use the ALA form that is there somewhere hidden somewhere away. That's my opinion, but either way, I just like that it's all automated.
And Jackie, oh, you're muted. Jackie, you're still muted.
Jackie, you're muted.
Hang on. I don't think I can like force unmute you from my end, unfortunately. Oh, I have an agree with Maggie.
Jackie, AKA Lynn Furman, agrees with Maggie.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I totally agree with Maggie. I mean, we don't use it, we don't borrow often, but I totally agree. And Naperville did call me when we weren't, during COVID, and I know she was very appreciative when we started again. So I totally agree with everything Maggie said. I'm for keeping it open to them.
Question, I'm filling in, I'm a patron services manager, so I'm filling in for Tony, he's on vacation. Why doesn't Naperville participate in WorldShare? Does anyone know?
I think that they just decided budget-wise not to do it. I think that there is a couple other consortiums that they participate in, and then I think that they're just able to get their items without having to pay. But I agree too with Maggie that, I mean, I don't think that it's a huge number of requests that we receive for those non-CCS libraries. So, I mean, it's what Woodstock, Carroll Stream, those type of libraries, and it's not a
Waukegan,
problem.
who is a neighbor of ours, also doesn't participate in WorldShare. So I'm feel sure that they used this option also. Yeah, but I like Naperville's also. I just placed the hold. My first one, I did it this week, and they were very sweet, very nice, and it was very seamless process.
My other question would be, would that cause extra work for CCS to keep that option?
It's already set. Basically, everything on the back end is already set up, so there would be no additional work for CCS staff.
It seems to me kind of backwards to lose it and then have these libraries start calling us or emailing us or faxing us direct order things. It seems to me that it would be taking a step backwards instead of trying to move forward.
And I guess can't speak for Louise and Amy because they're not here today. I would just also think, why evaluate it now? Let's see what it looks like in 6 months when they decide to shut it down. to see what our influx looks like. If you're looking at 98 pieces of material versus what are we, 28 libraries, what libraries are filling the most? And I guess then that library can decide if, I don't know if they can just say, hey, we're not going to fill this hold right now because of X, Y, Z, but it may not necessarily be more than what, 5 holds a month, you know? So it might not necessarily be a lot. I guess I'd want to see when, if other libraries pull away from this and decide no longer to, I'd want to reevaluate it.
If they do choose to go away from this catalog option, automated option, would then would we be able to formulate a process like what's this place, Naperville, where we get a library card? So let's say Waukegan wants to borrow an item. They could get a library card just like we have one for Naperville, and they can place a hold right through our catalog. That's how Naperville's work. Would that be an option?
I do not know. My guess is that would tie into, I don't know if it would be executive committee, governing board making the decision, whatever governance committee makes a decision, that would tie it into them. I'm going to make a note of that though.
I'll lend them my card.
Okay.
I have to be very honest. I have worked very, very hard to try to move away from paper trails. The amount of paper we discarded from ILL was astronomical when I first started working in this department. And so to have to start working with paper again really kind of scares me a little, but I'm close to retiring, as you can tell by my gray hair. Yeah, I got a good another 6 years in yet. But anyway, that's another thing too, is the paper trails. Okay. And I'll shut up now, okay?
You can keep talking. These are all good considerations. There's probably going to be at least another couple months before anything gets presented to a group for a formal decision. So with that, if you have any additional comments or thoughts that you would like to take, that you'd like us to take to the group, by all means, send it my way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input on that.
The next piece of new business came from Displays, refreshing and entering and modifying out-of-system accounts in LEAP. Mako, are you covering this for Deb?
Yeah, I will be covering this one. I am going to share my screen yet again. So I thought this is a really good thing to review. There we go. So what we're going to talk about here, when sending items out for a WorldShare request, libraries can choose to check the items out to an in-house account, or they can check the items out to a library account in Polaris. And with the latter method, this means the requesting library has their own patron account in the database. So library staff at any library can definitely create a new ILL library account as needed, or modify existing accounts as needed. So there's a page of instructions about data entry online. I'll pop this in the chat when I'm done, and we'll also add it to the minutes. But I'm going to take a few minutes right now just to review the process and kind of talk through. So we're going to create a library account for Orange County Public Library in Virginia. So I've gathered up some information before I start. First, I do have their address, their phone number from their website, but I don't have an email address for them yet. The other thing that I want to figure out before I get started is what code to use in the record. So this helps staff more quickly identify libraries and prevent mix-up with libraries of the same name. So like with an Orange County, we already have a couple Orange County public libraries in our database from other states. So we follow Rails standards for labels. If the library is on our delivery route, the XWH delivery route, we will use their delivery code. It's like HPK, MBK. All libraries on the XWH delivery route should either be a CCS library or have an existing ILL library account. So there's a very good chance you will not need this to use this type of code. Any libraries that are not on the delivery route, but are part of Rails, will use the Rails code. Again, most of these libraries should already be in the database. I'm sure you'll find some outliers. So in this case, you will just retrieve a 3-letter code from the Rails website. Finally, if the library is not part of Rails, use their OCLC code in their record. And we use these standards because it highlights the code library staff will most likely be using when filling out any kind of paperwork. Since this library is in Virginia and is not part of Rails, I will use their OCLC code. So I'm just going to also note that code before I start creating my patron account. So the library code is PEW pew pew. So with that, I'm going to jump over to Training Leap to create their account. So just like when anytime you're creating a new patron account, you'll definitely want to search for to see if they have an existing record in the database. And one thing I'm going to find out here too is with the barcode. Actually, let me just pull up the instructions real quick for ILL library accounts. I think one of the important things in here is how to format the barcode. So of course, barcode needs to be unique in the database, but it does not need to be a number. We have some, I think these are fairly recent guidelines. We've established them in maybe the past 3 years for creating a barcode, and the instructions are here. So we want the barcode to begin with an ILL, follow with the library name, and end with an abbreviated library type. So with our Orange County public library, it will be ILL Orange County PL. Now, as I mentioned, we have a couple Orange counties. Let me just search in our database already. So when I start searching for this barcode, we see we've got, one that's already exactly as I expect to use. So this is kind of when personal judgment comes into play, and that is absolutely okay. A lot of times, if you have a library with a similar name, you may need to make some judgment calls and just kind of get a little creative. And again, that's 100% okay. So because the barcode I want to use is already kind of in the system, I just need to make a quick modification to my barcode here. So I'm always going to start with ILL. And then Orange County spelled out, Orange was taken. So, I can make the decision to do Orange CO for an abbreviated county, or I can say Orange County VA for Virginia, and then PL for public library. So, I'm just kind of using my best judgment here for that library name, but I'm sticking with the standard of starting with an ILL and a PL. So I've got my barcode in, it is unique. And now I can fill in the rest of the information. How we'll do the name, we will enter the library's name in the last name field. So I'm just going to pop in Orange County Public Library. And then we'll use their code in the first name field. So I've got my PEW for my first name. The next thing I want to take care of is this registered at in this patron code field. So anytime you are creating an account for a library, you will register them to ILL for Cooperative Computer Services. That's going to be their branch. And then their patron code is going to be, let me scroll down here, ILL library. And by using this branch and this code, it allows us to include or exclude for things like statistics and e-content access. So it's important, it's definitely important to use this registered at branch and this patron code appropriately. The next thing that's a little different for the ILL library accounts is their expiration date. We don't want them to surprise expire. So we'll want to make sure their expiration date is 100 years into the future. So I'm just going to tack on a 1 here for that year to make it 100 years in the future. And then for my birth date, I'm going to use a placeholder date of January 1st, 1900. So that's kind of like our visual that this is a fake birthday. And then for statistical class, the stat class you choose is going to depend on if the library is located inside Illinois or outside Illinois. Because we've got to clean those up there. Because this is a library in Virginia, I will use the stat code of ILL outside Illinois. I'm going to pause for a second and just see if there's any questions on this profile section before I move on. Okay. Just make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. Great. So moving on to the attributes section, the only one you need to fill out is this ILL RB library code field. So if it's an Illinois library and the library code is present, so maybe, you know, this is Bowling, I'm creating a record for Bolingbrook, I will use that. My guess is that these libraries who have their code, like individual code listed in this list, already have local records with us. So if the library's 3-letter code is not present, we just have some placeholder ILLRB with other inside Illinois or outside of Illinois. Again, library in Virginia, I will use outside Illinois. For email, fill in the email address if there is one. My guess is if you're working directly with the library, they will provide an email address. For this example, I don't have one, so I'm just going to leave that blank. And then in the address field, I will go ahead and fill in their address that I have written down here. So let me just pop that in. Select my city from the list of zip codes, and now I'm just going to add in their street address, 146A Madison Road. Okay, I've got the state in there properly. So after adding in their address, you'll also just want to double check their address check date. The standard for that is also to make that 100 years into the future. So I'm just going to modify that date so it matches with the expiration date. This way, library staff don't have to worry about running into blocks when trying to check out. They won't have to then like take the time to renew.
A quick question.
Yeah.
Okay, up at the type when you left it as home.
Oh, yeah.
So are we leaving that way versus, I think that there's other like work primary, so just leave it home even though it's a public library?
You know, we don't have that indicated in our standards. How do you guys feel about that?
I think that since it's not been discussed before or done, probably maybe everybody's leaving it as home.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have thought to change that either. So does that mean that the majority of the libraries you currently have in there say home? Or
From HPK, they do not. So this is good to know. So I'll need to go whatever I've changed because I put it as work, I believe. Or yeah, because I guess I thought as home as being like a residence.
So I've got some chats here saying to leave it. I think I've changed the previous one's to work. I wasn't sure how impactful it was, which is a really good consideration. I don't think we have any reports right now that differentiate between types of addresses. The most, I think the most impact that the address type would have would then be under the notification settings, because there's a field here that instructs the database which address to use when running a print notice. So how about this? This is what we're going to do. For now, we're going to say we don't have a standard, but let's take this to the advisory group to see if we should have one. So we can talk about this at the advisory group and then follow up at our next meeting. I'm just making a note to myself real quick. Okay.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Alicia does.
I have a question. Actually about the ILL-RV code. I
Yeah.
know there's an option for Wisconsin. Would we ever want to use that instead of outside Illinois?
Oh. I am not quite sure where Wisconsin came from. I would say use outside Illinois just because it keeps it statistics and for data gathering. Outside Illinois keeps it standard for the ILL libraries.
I know at one time our library used to allow RBPs from Wisconsin to come in here and register their cards and things like that. So that might have been a relic from back. Well, not even a relic because they just changed that a year ago. They just changed the board that they're not allowing Wisconsin to come in an RBP.
Okay, I bet that's where that came from then. Okay, good to know.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching that. So I'm going to say right now, even if it's a Wisconsin library, use outside Illinois when registering these kind of accounts. Okay. So we've got the address check date set to 100 years in the future. And then, of course, I'm going to enter their phone number, 540-672-3811. Okay, and then under the notification settings, so if for now, if you are adjusting the address label, make sure that notice's address also matches up with that. I do believe it defaults though. Let me just try something here. So if I change the address type to work, yeah, it should default. So that is hopefully one less thing then you have to worry about. Under this notification option, if you have the email address from the library, email notices are preferred. If you're like me and you don't have an email address, my recommendation would be to use email address so they generate print notices. And the reason for this is that automated phone calls going to a library, there's a good chance that the phone call would probably get lost. Unless you've spoken directly to the library and they want those phone calls, in which case, of course, use their preference. But if you can, an email address is the best, print notice as the backup. So that's how we'll set up our notices. And then finally, under preferences, select the checkbox to exclude from collection agency. Now, CCS does not submit patrons registered to this branch to collection. We don't submit patrons at all, but patrons registered to this branch are not submitted to collections. However, in the off chance that something accidentally happens and gets changed in the registration, this will prevent the account from going to collections. And then I just want to point out, do not select any of these exclude from notices and reminders. Since item transitions from overdue to lost are dependent on overdue notices going out, if we exclude them from these notices, it will prevent items checked out to them from progressing to a bill. So blanket every single patron we don't want to exclude from notices.
Okay, I have a question there.
Yeah.
Our patrons, because we used to have 3-year expiration dates, and I didn't want them contacted in 3 years, you know, why haven't you come in or whatever. So we did check on the inactive patron. What does that do again? If you click on that inactive patron box?
Oh, so that is an optional notice.
Okay,
I don't know if any libraries have that, are using that notice right now. So basically,
okay.
yeah, it's like,
Doesn't matter then, because I wouldn't
Yeah.
want that notice going out. Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
okay, so I've got my patron all registered, then I'm gonna save, create the record, and they're all set. I'll check out to them as I want, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, searching for the, I do want to touch on searching for the library. So if ever you want to come into the library record and check out to them, or like update their account information, the suggested, I guess the record match suggestions here in this find tool are really excellent for this. So, you can start typing in part of the library's name, Orange County, and I hit enter too far. And then you'll get the patron suggestions here that you can select from. Or, you can start typing in part of an address. So this is actually a different Orange County. So if you have their address, you can start typing in their street address. You'll find a match that you can click on to open up the record. So definitely different ways you can get into the record. Now, when updating a record, you can certainly update any field of an existing record. Stick to those same guidelines we just talked about. You will likely find records that have existed for years and years and years that don't fit into the standards that we've established. So if you do, if you find a record that doesn't have like a code in the first name, or their expiration date isn't 100 years in the future, by all means, feel free to make those adjustments if you want. And then the last thing I did want to mention here about these types of records is about merging. So you'll commonly see multiple ILL records for a library after we migrate new libraries in. So, I know, especially after Palatine and Grays Lake came in, we were often seeing like 3 different records for a library. If you're comfortable merging the 2 ILL library records, you may do so. You'll definitely want to keep the native CCS record as the primary record and merge the record from the migrated library into that. If you don't feel comfortable, or you think there's something odd about the record you want an extra set of eyes on, like by all means, send it to CCS, open that help desk ticket with the library name. We are more than happy to check it out and to merge the records if we can. So don't be afraid to ask for another set of eyes on a merge. So with that, I'm just going to stop sharing. See if there's any questions on that. And oh yeah, let me pop the link to those instructions into the chat. Still, again, don't be afraid about if you're not doing it perfectly. If you like make a spelling error or something, someone else will catch it and they'll fix it, because we're all awesome here.
Question.
Yeah.
Were we supposed to put in parentheses the 3-letter code? I thought that was in the instructions. No?
Oh gosh, did I miss that?
Is it in there?
I don't have parentheses listed out in the instructions.
Okay. Might have an older version. Does anyone else remember that? Parentheses for the 3-letter code? Yeah,
I see
Yeah,
some
I
nods.
usually put them in when I do them, when I
Yeah.
do them.
Alicia
I
said
just-
that she's been using parentheses as well.
I follow exactly some written instructions that I printed out at one point. So I think maybe it got updated without the parentheses.
If it could have also just been me neglecting to add in that bit of instruction. So if the parentheses are the standard, I can just update those instructions and include to add the parentheses in.
It doesn't matter to me as long as we're all doing it the same way.
Are you going to
We
be
haven't
sending?
been doing.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Go in.
I would say we have not been doing parentheses now for quite a while.
I was just going to say, if you could send the link to the attendance and to that learning portal when you send it to us again. Could
Yeah.
you do that, please, both of those links or any links that we need?
Oh, how about this? In addition to the address label, we'll also have a formal, well, it's the Circ ILL group to make the formal decision about the parentheses. Any other questions about ILL accounts? Otherwise, I will pass it back to Jeannie. Yes, I will also send the PowerPoint presentation.
Angie, did you have a question? Angie has a question.
Yes, I did have a question. Sometimes the library's name is really long and it doesn't completely fit in the last name field. What would you recommend we do in that case? We had an example the other day, which I don't remember. Elliot might remember.
Oh
But
yeah,
the-
it's the Brookfield Library. They renamed themselves the
Oh.
Linda Sokol Francis Brookfield Library.
So we wanted to to put the correct name in, but we couldn't figure out how to get it all to fit in the last name field, or if we should abbreviate it. So we'd like to hear your suggestion on that.
This is something I haven't thought about. So I know for university libraries, we have like the guidelines are to kind of divide up the name between the first and the middle name field. How does the group feel? What would the group prefer, I guess? What would be easy or logical for you when you're creating these accounts?
I know when we've done the universities, it's been, the last name has been the university, like University of Illinois at Springfield, and then the middle name was Brookins University or Brookins Library. So maybe we could do that, do the Linda Francis whatever, and then is the middle name, because then when it shows up, well, no, that would have to be the first name, and then Brookfield Library is the middle name, because then when it shows up on the screen as the name, it'll have it in the right order.
Yeah, we've got some, and Jeannie says she agrees having it in the middle, and then we've got a comment splitting it between the two fields is fine. Rather have all the name to avoid creating duplicate accounts versus abbreviations or omissions. That's a really good point. We'll
Will
draft.
those search on the middle name? Like if we did type in Brookfield, would it search the middle name? Because I've never actually thought about that.
I think it does.
Okay.
I think all three fields are searchable.
Okay.
They are. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we gotta agree. So I think from what I'm hearing is that people like having the entire name in there, and then split it up between first name field, middle name field. Maybe I'll modify the instructions and then just kind of run it by the advisory group. We're meeting in 2 weeks. The advisory group is meeting in 2 weeks. run it by the advisory group, and then we'll send it out to the wider group. I did see that Brookfield name change, and I was like, that is a mouthful. Oh, yeah, good point. Jackie mentioned that searching by zip code works well too. Okay.
So thank you. That was an excellent presentation, by the way, Nico.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Lots of information. We're going to move on to book clubs at our library. I'm going to present some information for the American Library Association. They started actually back in 1982, launching the first national book discussion series called Let's Talk About It. So that's almost 40 years ago. And in it, they developed and presented ALA public programs, which included film, audio, discussion series, family reads, storytelling series, theme-based book discussion series, program reading discussion programs, book lists, guides, scholarly resources on dozens and dozens of topics. And all of this information is free and is on the ALA website. Now, some of the things I'm going to be going over right now comes directly from the American Library Association. And when we go to discussion, I want you to think about some of these points because it's going to help you in answering the discussion questions that are listed. One of the first things they start with is, how do you start this book discussion group? And while it doesn't directly relate to our duties as collecting the books off the shelves and sending them off to the various libraries, it does give us a background on why our services are so important. First thing is we have our librarians deciding on what kind of book group. Is it a social book group? Is it a serious academic book group? And what kinds of books are they choosing in terms of the literary genre? How many members do they have? Is it eight people, 16 people? Is it a very serious group? Where you might have a smaller group that's more intense, that has a particular topic that they're focused on, like say someone's doing a cancer series. When should you meet? Are you meeting on weekdays, mid-morning, lunchtime, dinner, evening hours? And what do our librarians consider? They consider people's jobs, their childcare, family dinners, the difficulty in driving to our library locations. Are they doing these services online? Are they happening Saturday mornings, Sunday afternoons, or are they happening in the evening? What is traffic like during that time within your city? And then we come to, what do we call those book groups? Sometimes they're just called the book group, but a lot of times they have some pretty inventive names to them. And then there's the discussion of how do they keep in touch? Are they distributing phone lists, phone numbers, addresses to the members of the group, or is that simply kept within the library? And then keeping those memories alive, how do they document what's being covered, not just this month in your newsletter, but over all of the years? Because remember, this is 40 years that the American Library Association has been putting together their book groups. And then what do these book groups give back to the community? Sometimes book groups actually collect scholarships. They do an annual literacy award. They purchase books for the local libraries in order to give back to the library, and sometimes it also involves some tutoring. There are background rules. Sometimes you have members who come to the book group, but they haven't actually read the book, and you think, oh my gosh, I didn't read the book. But sometimes those people have valuable insights in listening to others' discussions. Sometimes there are disagreements while a discussion is going on, and everyone is very gracious. And you have to remember, differing opinions are actually good. Members like to socialize. So you have to divide that time up during their time meeting. And sometimes you have a dominant personality that happens simply, someone talks more than someone else. And how is that controlled? There's the meeting format on how the meetings are going to continue. And let me see, what else do I have? And then you come down to holding the discussion. Who's going to be the leader of that meeting? Like here, I am actually the chairman, but we have Mako leading many of our discussions, and she's a wonderful leader. And so when you have someone leading a group, sometimes it's someone from the outside, sometimes it's someone from the inside of the library, and sometimes it's one of those members that happens to be the book club member themselves. And then there are the resources. Where do they choose these titles? And that's what we see coming through. Suddenly we see 4 or 5 copies of the same book crossing our desk, and we wonder, oh, somebody must be doing a new book club. And there are hundreds of lists out there. The Guardian has a list of 100 books that are suggested for book clubs. The Harvard Bookstore has a list of 100 books. The Modern Library has a book of 100 best nonfictions, and it just goes on. And then you get to those, if 100 isn't enough, it's 1001 books that you need to read before you die. In talking about the questions that we have who selects and who weeds the titles. A lot of times those people happen to be someone within our library, and it could be divided in between fiction and nonfiction. And when we get to those nonfiction books, when we're picking them up and we're sending them out, these are some things that you can think about. Is this book a cultural portrait of a life in another country or in a different region of your own country? And what does the author offer? Do they celebrate or do they criticize the culture? Do they consider family traditions, economic and political structures, the arts, the language, the food, and religious beliefs? Does the author wish to preserve, or does he wish to reform the culture that's being covered? How does this culture differ from other cultures? Is the book surprising, intriguing? Is it difficult to understand? Does the book offer a central idea or a central premise? So when we talk about the number of titles in the collection that's at your library, these are actually some of the things that the librarians are thinking through when they select these books. And then we go on to those questions that are covered during the book discussion itself. Do the issues in this book actually affect your own life? Do they affect them directly on a daily basis, or are they more general? What evidence does the author give to support the book's ideas? Does he have personal observations or assessments, facts, statistics, opinions, historical documents, or scientific documents? I know one of the books that was very popular in our book groups was called Bad Blood, and your libraries probably covered that one also, but that had a lot of scientific evidence in it. Is the book convincing? Does it come from an authoritative source? And what assertions can you walk away with? What kind of language does the author use? Is it objective? Is it dispassionate? Or is it very passionate? And does the author draw implications for the future? Does the author offer solutions? Does the author ask you to a call of action? So these are all interesting things that our librarians think about when they are selecting these books. And I found it interesting to read through this because when the books come across the table, it's just not a book. It's all of these things together. So I'm going to turn it over to Jackie, and she's going to go through the questions for the discussion.
Thank you, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
I brought this topic up because many years ago here at Lake Villa, we had a book club collection of books. We had 10 copies of different titles that book groups could request. And it's been gone for many years now, and much to my dismay. And now that we've got a new strategic plan, I'm trying to gather data that I could get some people on board with starting this collection again. Because back in the old days, when we had in-person meetings and we went to libraries, I do know many of you had wonderful book club collections. So that's why I want to know who still has those, and all these other questions about the number of titles you have, what other resources you provide for book clubs. Now, while we don't have the books anymore, we do have a book club in a bag program. So patrons can request up to 10 copies of a certain title, and we give them an extended due date for the items, and we pack them up in a bag along with some discussion questions. But now that we don't have that collection, I go out to all of you, place the holds, and you kind people share your collections with us. And that is another question I have. Not everyone does share their book club collections, understandably so. You have them for your patrons, but some do. I kind of get the impression that a lot of libraries are more lenient with their book club collection. I don't know if I'm seeing that correctly or not. So that was another question I have. So there's this whole list of questions. I know it's a lot. So I'm not sure how if we want to just talk or put them in the chat. I guess my main thing would be who still does have book club collections at their library, and the number of titles, who selects them, and all those questions that are on the agenda. So I'll shut up and let you talk.
Okay, I'll go first because of how things have changed with meetings, Zoom and things like that. A lot of what's going on here, we do still have a book collection. A lot of books in that collection, however, I think have been used by book clubs, but they still go out. So they were kind of picked after the fact. But we do have, through Zoom, we have Cooking with Books every other week. And the librarian makes sure that those items are available through Hoopla, so people can download the cookbook that way. We also have a comic book club, and they kind of do the same thing, that they make sure it's available on Hoopla, or someone can request a hard copy if they want to. The other thing we do is we do Judy Levine, who comes four times, like in the fall, she'll have a series, and in the spring, then she takes the summer off. Those books are Reader's Advisor. She submits a list to Judy. Judy picks the 4 that she wants, usually 1 nonfiction, 3 fiction. And then finally, I'll shut up after this, we have discussions with Davison, and he is a professor at Lake Forest College. He comes in and he does 4 books, and he picks the titles. Then the librarians order the books. A lot of times our friends of the library provide the budget for it, or it comes out of the adult services budget. But anyway, that's how we do it. We do not have private book clubs. We do try to get books if somebody requests them, but we really do more of what the library offers. And then we'll have, we have, everyone's been doing a lot of the joint discussions where the authors come in. And then, of course, there's a huge demand for those books. But anyway, that's what we do at Highland Park.
So it sounds like we too have in-house book discussions. We have that also, but and it sounds like you have some great stuff going on there. But I'm particularly interested in the book discussions that our patrons, their private book discussions that they have with their own groups outside of the library.
Hey Jackie, we don't do it at Round Lake, but you could check with the Vernon Library. I think they offer book club kits for patrons.
Thanks.
At Niles, we take our so that when the staff does a book club, they take those
the
books.
book club books are separate.
Go ahead, Mary Ellen.
Marianne?
So yeah, the librarians, when they do their book clubs, there's 2 fiction and there was a nonfiction one. We purchase multiple copies and it comes out of, our materials budget. then we switched them over to what called club reads. So we take like 10 copies and we put them on, there's a display on the wall on the second floor. We call them club reads. So then people can come and pick them out either themselves or as a book club. Grab a bunch. I know like the senior center over at Niles will come and pick up about 10 copies or even choose from that wall what they want to do for a book discussion. And there's 36 plus titles. What else? There's no discussion guides available, but those are available to go out.
Thank you.
Yeah, for Park Ridge, I think we have about 76 local book clubs that meet that aren't ran by the library. So if you want more information, you should talk with our adult services manager, Laura Scott. We also do have a lot of book discussion sets in our collection. And we also have, of course, book discussions that are ran by our librarians. But I know over here at Park Ridge, they're very popular. So Laura, if you're interested in more, she can share more with you.
Thank you.
Not Lynn. I've looked at your name, Jackie.
I know you at Wilmette have an awesome book club collection. I've seen it.
Yes, we have a room now that's called the Book Club Hub. Unfortunately, I couldn't do a count to tell you how many items since the library is still closed. But it is roughly, I'd say 15 copies of each book is in there, from fiction to nonfiction for adult. So we do have our in-house book clubs, but then we have a whole room called the Book Club Hub where people can come in and get the titles. But Louise and Amy, both are on vacation again. So they handle all of our book clubs, and they do not provide any reading material like flyers or anything like that, but it's pretty intense what they do and give recommendations. So if you'd like to, I'd reach out to Louise when she's back on Monday.
I have a question. Is this these book collections like at Wilmette, are these interlibrary loanable? Or do you use them exclusively for?
So we protect our Book Club Hub books for 3 months, I believe it is, for Wilmette only patrons. And then at the 3-month mark, the 90-day flips the system in the catalog, and it automatically is foldable to any patron at that point in time, including all of our new release books are not protected either. So that's why a lot of our new releases go out. But Book Club Hub is the first, I want to say 90 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Carrie from Dundee wrote that we don't have a book club collection, but we also have the book clubs in a bag for patrons to go grab and go. Included is both regular and large print copies and a discussion guide. We currently have 5 of those bags for adults and 3 for youth.
So I'm curious though, how those, you don't have a collection. Is it just an assortment of stuff that adult services chooses to put in that bag, Carrie?
I don't know officially. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know officially who is the final selector for both adult and teen. My best guess would be our adult and teen librarian who leads our in-house book clubs, curates the adult ones, and I believe our main, one of our main youth librarians selects that. So it's pretty much isolated to just one person selecting for each department.
So it's just a grab and go. You have them visible to patrons when they come in the library. Good.
Yep, they're in a huge logoed canvas bag. They get to take just the whole bag with them, and the bag's the only thing that's, I believe the bag's the only thing that's barcoded, at least with RFID. And then they just return the whole bag in, and then we return it to those librarians just so they can make sure everything's accounted for and nothing's missing.
Thank you.
Here at Algonquin Library, we do have a book club collection. We just have a few shelves with all the books on it. I looked at a list and it says we have like 200 plus titles. I don't know if that's accurate, but that seemed like a lot to me. But anyway, and our popular materials librarian is the person who selects the titles and manages it. And then we have a DIY book club, a do-it-yourself book club, where patrons can fill out a form online and request titles. But if they just come in, you know, we'll show them to the shelves to see if there's something there they like. Otherwise, we'll put things on hold for them too.
Okay, we have two more things in the chat. Not JK, I'm not sure what library you're from, but each year we invite local book clubs and communities to an after-hours talk by a local author. Our collection serves as a quick grab and go. The number of titles is determined by our space. We teach the club members how to download ebooks and audiobooks. We have discussion guides and a fund from a private donor. And then timeless titles are selected to limit reading. Then Sue Bolt, Carrie has 50 some instant book club bags to grab and go. Still not sure. JK, what library you're from?
Lake Forest.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Jeannie. Gosh, I've been like a dodo. I'm like, who the heck is JK?
I just don't let it fly. Get it again.
And that's all for the narration for now.
Thank you. I feel like when I'm in the catalog looking for placing holds for some of my book clubs, there are a lot of book clubs out there. So, and then sometimes I'm not sure, I tell people I'm not sure if we're going to get enough copies and if they want them really quickly, because I'm not sure of people's sharing of those book club books too. And some of you have answered that already, but still a little bit curious about that.
I think, Jackie, also one of the things we noticed is the suspend. If you don't check on the holds queue, if another library has a book club in the future that puts it in pause, you may miss it and not catch, because they're on two different fields, the current requests and then the pause requests are the all requests. Yeah. That's something that one of my staff members noticed. They're like, why didn't I get my book? It went to a book club because that got unpaused.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Good point.
I'm just going to pop in the conversation real quick to say I've got some fantastic photos that people have emailed to me. So I'm adding them into a folder, and I will email out the link to the folder so everyone can open, peruse, download the photos as they want.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. And if there's anything else you think of later, or you want to just email me, please feel free. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a great discussion. We're going to move on to, let me see, Indian Trails, Patty Bueller, Indian Trails processing of all overdue materials. The way in which this came up was I was reading some emails that were flying back and forth, and Patty had some good information to share. Patty, do you want to continue?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. We had to start some very specific steps because we had an issue with one member who had 3 textbooks out and was not responding to any overdues, and it was $700. And we didn't hear from her until we literally had our checks to pay for them in our outbox, and we ended up taking them back. So we started a few steps to tighten up our timelines, which felt like an issue. You know, how long do we wait for them to call us back? So what we started doing is once we notice that an item is overdue, we call the member and let them know that it's overdue with the lending library. And we do try to get an extension, ask for a renewal from that library. If they don't respond to us or return it, I don't love this, we have 14 days that we will ask for an invoice. I would like to make that longer. I'm kind of working on that because I don't think that's long enough. Sometimes we don't know it's overdue for longer than 14 days. Once we do get to that 14 days, be it the renewal that the library gave us, which usually we will get something, we ask for an invoice. Some of the libraries are quite surprised that we're asking for an invoice that soon, but we just had to speed it up. I will also ask them if they can just let me know how much it's going to be before I get, some invoices come like that day, some it takes a couple weeks. Once we get that invoice, we send a letter to the member, and I send it through the mail because we've had issues with, I don't use that email anymore and I don't use that cell phone number. And I try to include that price in there because sometimes we just I'm sorry, my dogs are going crazy. We just had a University of Chicago item, which is $150. So sometimes them just seeing $150 in a letter will prompt a response. Our letter will also include that once Indian Trails has paid for this item, we will not take it back. We don't take anything back that we've paid for. And our line for how long we'll keep that back is once we have the check. So at our board meeting, when they sign the check, we keep track of when that board meeting is. The next day, that fine goes on that member's account and we won't take it back. It seems to be working pretty well. Fortunately, once they hear that you're going to have to pay for this and we won't take it back, we usually get it back. I don't know if you have any questions. There's things that I would like to tighten up. I don't love that 14 days, but we had to have something because we had an instance where it literally went on for 3 months with this person who claimed that her items couldn't be lost because here she was with them bringing back to us. So that's what we've been doing. It has worked out pretty well. We've had changes in staff, and that way we have more of a guideline if somebody's taking over if I'm not here. I don't know if anybody has any questions or hopefully that's useful.
I have to say, it sounds like a very sound plan, and it's similar to what we're doing at Lake Forest. Here in Lake Forest, we have Lake Forest College. So sometimes those college students come and think, I'm going to interlibrary loan a book and it'll be my textbook that I didn't pay for the season. And we simply tell them we can't supply your textbooks that way. So that solves some of our problem.
A lot of our requests come from adult services and the desk, so I don't necessarily see them. If a member calls me inquiring about a textbook, I do tell them, like, I can't promise you will have this for the semester. The library may recall it and you have to bring it back. And that the libraries often charge high processing fees, especially if we get it from a college. We had one that was like a $30 processing fee in and of itself. So, you know, I don't want to discourage people. I don't know what anybody's financial situation is, but, you know, sometimes these turn out to be more costly than just borrowing from Amazon if they damage it or don't get it back.
Yeah, I think that's one option people aren't aware of, that they can actually rent those books out from Amazon. And that's a good option that we've suggested a couple of times. Anyone else? No, thank you very much, Patty. I'm going to move on to the Rails transit tickets. And who presented that question?
I did. Prospect Heights. I just, you know, a little request. I've asked this before in other meetings. What does this say, people? So we're PHK. This, I think, actually was going to Palatine, though, PAK. It's just, you know, people, they just, please ask your staff just to be more mindful when they're filling out tickets. And then this one, I have no idea. We really couldn't figure this one out at all. This is where it came from. So it didn't matter, but it was just another example of clarity missing from the Rails tickets. And then it just delays things for patrons. So it was brought to my attention, so I'm bringing it to your attention. Thank you.
I've started, I've started, I put the in like if I'm doing something to Fremont, I write MUK and then right underneath it, I write Fremont.
Mm.
And I do that for all the libraries when I'm doing it. Because I figure, you know, it just, it's harder for them to miss if they've got two ways to see where it's supposed to go.
Mm.
Now, we're having a lot of mix-ups. We're getting Highwood, Highland Community College, Huntley, a lot of them. So the one thing that Rails asked me yesterday, every time that you get a misdirected item, first of all, like for Huntley, I do HUK and I do Huntley and then I circle it and pray that it will get to Huntley. But the one thing that Rails asked to fill out a ticket so that they can keep track of it. I know that like yours are not, yours is just poor penmanship, but you know, if you are getting a lot of misdirected things, because for instance, Highwood only has delivery 3 days a week. So when we get their ILL, that delays it for them like a whole another, you know, what could be, if it's a Thursday, they're not going to get maybe till next Wednesday if they're lucky and it's already checked out to the patron. So anyway, Rails has suggested, you know, fill out the ticket, then they'll talk to the delivery service as well.
So are you saying you're getting whole bins that are misdirected?
Well, yesterday, actually, HRQ is the other one. I get tons of Antioch's returns that come to us. So yesterday I had 5 from Antioch that were for Antioch that came in our bins. No, if I get a full bin, I call them and they've come and they've picked it up. Like for some reason, because Deerfield's close to us, sometimes we get DFK's whole bins, you know, so, but no, but I'm getting more like every day, I'll probably get 2 to 3 that are not for us, that are ILDSs, and they're just not reading the label. But then for Huntley, we're getting a lot of, I don't know if people think that HUK is Highland Park. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's, you know, where the mistake is, if it could be someone in our member consortium that thinks Highland Park is HUK. So I guess that's another thing, is to have your staff, if you question what the code is, you know, look at it. But HUK and HPK, I'm not sure if Huntley can speak for having problems of getting our stuff as well. So.
Well, thank you.
I'm good.
Is there, I have a question. Is there a list on the portal of all the codes for the libraries?
There is, but there's also, if you go on to Rails, you can also print out the list of codes for the ILDSs as well. You can get that print out. But yeah, on CCS, there's a list of the codes for the libraries.
Do you know where I could find it by any chance? Or, because I feel like I tried looking before.
Let me see if I can grab the link.
Thank you. And also I have a question. Why is it important to write the from library in the label?
I think it's just a procedure that we all agreed upon. And I guess just in case there's a question, like maybe we get a book that first was at Huntley, then went to Niles, then Niles sent it to us for our patron, and maybe the book is damaged.
But
then
that's all
then we can,
tracked and LEAP.
well, it is, but then it also makes it, before you check it out to your patron, you can look and see that, hey, this is Huntley's book, but it actually came from Niles, and you can check and see, did the Niles patron, was it damaged there? So
So do
I
you
don't
leave,
know.
do you leave the slips on for your patrons? Or do you take them
No,
off? when you
that's
get
not,
your delivery?
that's not, the point is, I would not check it out to my patron if it came to me damaged. I would try to find out where it was damaged. So no, I do not leave the slips on for my patrons.
I always thought that was more Rails for their tracking for some reason. And I don't know if anybody remembers, years ago, like we use stamps. We pre-stamp the tickets with from LVK. We pre-stamp the packet of tickets ahead of time, so it's quicker. But years ago, they were talking about, because they kept getting more libraries in Rails, they were talking about having to write out the whole name. I don't know if you remember that. I'm glad that hasn't come about.
Yeah, I'm just curious because it seems like a waste of staff time. I mean, I've never had to use the from label, and most of the time you're just taking it off as soon as you receive it. So I just thought it was a good point to bring up for consideration, maybe.
I think when I get a redirect though, is I don't check it into LEAP. So it then goes to the next library. We get a lot of WNK items because of the WLs not processed. So we end up just, if a staff member takes it off and sees that inadvertently it was supposed to go to WNK, they just relabel it and don't scan it into LEAP. So it wouldn't show that it actually made it to our library and another library held it. Does that?
So you put a new label on from your library?
Yeah. Because the person wrote it improperly, so we had to redirect. So we don't necessarily scan it sometimes.
Any other comments? Well, I think we're ready to wrap it up. We've had a lot of discussion today and presentations. It was actually a really good meeting. Can I have someone to motion for us to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you, Jackie. Is there someone to second?
I'll second. Anne from PHK.
Okay, so we have Anne Marie doing the second. Thank you. Have a wonderful week. Have a great weekend, and thank you for coming out this morning. Bye-bye.